What's life really like on the road for a young travel influencer and creator? Hey everybody, I'm John Santiago, and on this episode of the Videocraft show presented by Video Husky, you'll learn from this week's guests that it's not all glamour and luxury. Stay tuned. Reid is a travel vlogger and videographer who hails from beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. And since 2013, Laura has been creating content on YouTube, originally focusing on her interests in fashion and lifestyle, all while pursuing a degree in psychology at the University of British Columbia. But after graduating, the travel bug bit her hard. And before entering the work world, she explored the real world first, backpacking for 6 months throughout Southeast Asia. And after a brief stint with a marketing agency upon returning back home, she took the plunge into working for herself in 2017, and she hasn't looked back since. Reid, welcome to the Videocraft show presented by Video Husky. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I love talking about video stuff. A huge passion of mine. So I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, and we were talking before we officially started here, and you have a podcast yourself. You've started it with your boyfriend, and we were kind of chatting about like the challenges of like getting everything sorted and whatnot, and getting everything set up. And I imagine that it's somewhat similar to like the travel vlogging experience, but obviously a little bit different, but still some difficulties involved, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I started my podcast back a few months ago. It's called The Travel Times, and it definitely has its own, like you were saying, its own set of challenges. But it's very cool because it's a different way to connect with an audience, especially because it's longer form content. You're able to talk for longer, people can get to know you better, and it's a different stream that I think is really up and coming. And so other creators out there who might be listening, I highly recommend that's something you look into doing. And whether you do a video podcast or a regular podcast, it's super worth it, and I think something that's on the rise and will continue to grow.
Yeah, that's definitely something we'll try and touch on here. I have so many things I want to talk to you about, honestly, because Laura, admittedly, you are the first well, not necessarily first, but one of the first like travel vloggers that I've gotten female. You're the first female travel vlogger that I've gotten to speak to.
There's not a lot of us.
there are quite a few, but it's interesting because, I've traveled quite a bit myself. I was actually, I know you've been to Bali, in the Philippines. I was in Bali myself, living there for 6 months in 2019. And
That's awesome.
I never met any like content creators while I was out there. I do remember, I think, seeing one who I followed on Instagram, like at the grocery store in Canggu, and I did like a double take. I'm like, is that who I think it is? I'm not quite sure. I don't want to go up and chat with her, but I just have so many things that I want to talk to you about. But where I want to begin this conversation is just it. In your with your upbringing and where you're from. I mean, I want to know where the origins of your creativity came from.
Definitely. So I'm born and raised in Vancouver. I actually was raised just outside of Vancouver in a suburb and lived here my whole life. And for me, I've always been a very creative person. And so from when I was younger, I actually danced competitively my whole life. And so I was always kind of involved in some sort of art form. When I was younger, it was dance. And then as I got older, I started to get more interested in video and photography and all of that. And so when I was going to university, I was getting a psychology degree, and there's nothing too artistic about that. It's very much just you're studying, you're doing exams. And so I needed a creative outlet to kind of fuel that side of me that I felt like I wasn't getting fueled in university when I was just doing my psych classes. And so I started my YouTube channel, and I actually started making fashion videos. And for me, this was a fun way to just explore different ways of showing off outfits I had created and filming. And back then, my videos, I thought they were great, but looking back, I'm like, no, they were horrible. But it's always funny seeing the progression. But still, for me, even if they weren't the best quality at the time, it was really fun to just be able to express myself and come up with cool different video ideas. And so that's kind of, as an adult, how I have fueled a lot of my creativity is through my video work. And as I've grown and learned more video skills, I've been able to express that better through my content and everything. And like I had mentioned, I did start with fashion videos, and then I had made the switch back a few years ago to do travel because I started traveling and I really liked it. And I found there was no female travel vloggers out there. And so I kind of found a space in YouTube that needed to be filled. And so I decided to start making travel videos. I had a few girlfriends of mine who were also interested in travel at the time, and they kind of did the same thing as me. And still to this day, there really isn't that many female travel vloggers. And so it's cool to be in that kind of like forefront, paving the way for everyone. And I always encourage other people to start doing it. But yeah, now I get to make cool videos and travel around. So really feel like I'm living the dream now.
Yeah, would you say that there's more of a tendency for women creators to veer towards Instagram, and just focus more on photos, aesthetics rather than doing the video content?
Yeah, definitely. I find you see more females doing like fashion Instagram type stuff, or you don't really see males doing that. Whereas in the video section, where it's something like the adventure, the travel, it's mainly males and you don't see that many females. So that's why I'm always like, okay, more females need to be doing this, and vice versa. I mean, more men should be doing fashion blogs because there's really not that many of it. And so it's kind of cool now seeing people cross over, maybe who weren't traditionally doing a certain type of content, where it's now becoming more popular for them to do it. But for sure, yeah, you see a lot more females being Instagram influencers, I guess you could say, compared to males.
So was anybody in your family, or did you have friends who were also creative that inspired you as well?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, everyone in my family is quite creative, kind of in their own right. But for me, when I had started my YouTube channel, no one was doing YouTube. Like, it was very much an anomaly. Like, people were like, "Oh, that's weird. You have a YouTube channel." And I mean, growing up, when I was dancing, I was around a lot of creative people. So I have always been surrounded by people in my life who have been inspiring to me, and now I have a lot of creator friends as well, which has been nice because you kind of fuel off of each other, and having that support where it's like you can bounce ideas off of someone who's also doing the same thing as you, or if you need someone to go out and shoot with you, that's always really great for helping kind of just like get your creativity up and yeah, not falling behind or anything.
Were there any creators like old school YouTubers or anything like that? It's weird to say old school since
It's
YouTube is
yeah.
still kind of like a new thing. But anybody that you watched or followed online that were like that inspired you and said, "Hey, I want to do what they're doing."
Yeah, so I was started watching YouTube videos basically right when YouTube like got popular, and I used to watch Juicy Star '07. She is a seriously OG YouTuber. She was basically the first beauty guru to exist, and she I think was the first person that made me realize I'm like, "Oh, actually I could do these." And the videos themselves weren't anything crazy. It was usually her sitting in her bedroom talking about some new product she got. Back then it was stuff like my drugstore haul or very kind of simple videos, but it was so cool because it was the first time seeing people put themselves out there. And so for me, that was someone who kind of has always stuck out in my mind as like who I guess inspired my YouTube career. And then I mean a bunch of the other OG YouTubers as well.
Yeah, and then at that time it was just more or less like you said, it was just an outlet for your creativity. There was no expectation. Like you didn't go into this thinking I could make a career out of it.
Exactly. It was very much just a for fun thing. I actually, when I started my YouTube channel, because most people don't know this, but I actually had a channel before the one I have now. It was called Laura and Style, and it was based off of the name Life and Style, the magazine, because I just thought it was cool. And the videos that I would make, I actually didn't put my head in them. And so it would just be my body showing outfits and just like twirling around like this. And it was funny because I had actually started that channel in high school and I was so scared of getting made fun of. And so for me, it was a way of kind of keeping me anonymous while still being able to be creative and do what I loved, because I really did like making these videos and it did help fuel my creativity and kind of just, yeah, it was really fun too as well.
Tell me about the early days of your YouTube channel and just getting the word out about it, right? Like, I mean, again, we were talking about it here. There was no expectation in terms of wanting to turn this into a career or whatnot. But I'm sure, like everybody who creates something, you'd like at least somebody to watch what you're doing, even if it's in the very beginning, even if it's only like a handful of people. What were you doing to kind of spread the word about the content that you were creating?
Definitely. Well, back then it was a lot easier, I would say, to grow, but also still difficult. So you could grow your channel by just commenting on other people's channels and telling them to check out your channel, which now you wouldn't do that because people are like, oh, that's spam. But back then, that was something that you would just go and comment on other people who were similar. You'd also set up collaborations, which I mean is still common to this day, but back then collaborations were a lot more effective. So you would collaborate with someone and say, this person made another type of video like mine, go check them out. And you'd kind of give them a little like plug in your video. And so doing that really helped to grow your channel back then. And I wish it was the same as it is today. I find when you do collaborations today, it'll help, but not a huge amount. It takes a lot more work than that. So everything was just simplified back then.
What do you think has changed about that in terms of collaborations?
I would say that there's just more users trying to do what you're doing. And so the competition is way larger, and people only want to subscribe or follow a certain number of people. They're not going to go and follow 10,000 people. And so they're very selective with who they're going to follow. So they have to really like you. Whereas back then, there wasn't that many people doing YouTube. And so if they even kind of thought you were somewhat interesting, most likely they'd follow you. And so it was a lot easier to gain a following back then. But given that, I mean, even back then, my videos, because I thought they were good at the time, but they really weren't. My channel wasn't growing a huge amount. Like it definitely was just a hobby level. I'd get maybe like a few hundred to sometimes a few thousand views on a video, which I guess for back then was a lot. But yeah, it was just, it was definitely for fun. I didn't see it going anywhere at the time.
What was that like for you at that time when you were just starting out? Was, just to think like, holy crap, like there's like a thousand people watch my video. What's going on here?
It
Did
was
you ever
really
feel that
cool.
way?
Yeah, the coolest moment was when I got my first YouTube paycheck because the threshold is $100. So you have to make $100 before they'll send you anything. And that was the coolest moment where I'm like, okay, like this could actually go somewhere. But then the reason I actually had gotten rid of my old channel is because I didn't realize at the time, but so at Google AdSense, obviously you can make money from your videos. I was clicking on my own ads and I was young and naive and I didn't realize that that would actually get your Google account flagged, but not just flagged. So I got banned from Google AdSense. I can say this now because that was like 7, 8 years ago. And so I was devastated. I was so upset. And I'm like, well, like any hope that I ever had of ever making money again is gone. And I think I was getting like my friends and family to click on ads because I'm like, whoa, if you click on an ad, you make 3 cents. Like click on it 10 times. But you can't do that, obviously. So for me, I was like, okay. So then that's actually what prompted me to stop YouTube for a while. And then years later, I went back and made the channel I have now when I was in university. So I've been on the platform for a long time.
How long of a break was that for you? So you started that in high school, right? The
Yeah,
first
so I
one.
started that in grade 11, and then I did that for like a year and a half, 2 years, I would say, and then I stopped doing YouTube for 2 years, and then I started the channel I have now in second year university, sorry. So yeah, it's been quite the journey for me on YouTube.
Gotcha. Well, I wanted to also talk a little bit about your experiences on the road and traveling and whatnot. I mean, this is one of the things that I enjoy most when I get to talk to travel creators like yourself because I have that in common with with all of you, right? Like I had mentioned, I lived in Bali for 6 months in 2019. A year before, I was in Colombia for several months, living in Medellin. Been to many different places. Um, what was it that inspired you or encouraged you to, get out on the road?
Yeah. So after I graduated university, for me, that was something that I kind of always saw in my head of, okay, you graduate university and then you go and travel. And I had seen a lot of other people do that. And so I knew that was something I definitely wanted to do and experience. And I mean, growing up, my family, we would travel kind of ever so often. I had gone to, when I was 16, Beijing with my dad, which was really cool. And then we'd go to Mexico as a family. But other than that, it wasn't, yeah, too far. I mean, China was the farthest I had gone. And even that trip, I was like, wow, this is really cool to go out and see the world. So for me, that was always my plan after university, go and travel. And then as soon as I got to Southeast Asia, I honestly fell in love. I just thought it was so cool and so different than any other place I had traveled to before. And it's just everything was so cheap and things were very casual there. It was warm. You could wear your elephant pants everywhere. I mean, as a backpacker, was our main outfit, these comfy elephant pants. And it was just a great time. And so that's kind of when I first really fell in love with traveling.
Yeah, I remember buying a pair of those for friends when I was in
Yeah.
Bangkok
I
at the
still
end of
sleep in them as
2019.
my pajamas now. They're very comfortable, but it's, yeah, it encompasses Southeast Asia because you can literally live in those pants while you're traveling.
So which countries specifically in Southeast Asia did you go to?
So I actually went everywhere in Southeast Asia, except for Malaysia and Myanmar. And the first place I went was Thailand, and I had actually lived in Bangkok for 3 months, and would go like travel around, and it was just such a interesting experience that I still to this day absolutely love Bangkok. I think it's such a cool city. People usually write it off for being just dirty and gross, but it has so much to offer, and you really learn that, especially when you live there, how much the city has to offer.
Yeah, I spent about a month in Bangkok after I left Bali, went to the Philippines and then went to Bangkok for like a month before coming back to America prior to basically the pandemic. I probably would have been out on the road still had the pandemic not
Yeah, wouldn't
not
we all? Yeah.
started. And so I totally agree with you about Bangkok. Like I was quite impressed with how modern it was, and just, the public transportation is easy to get around on, like the metro and whatnot. And then if you wanted to drive a motorbike, you could, or you could just call a motorbike to drive you around places. It was cool.
Definitely, yeah. I always I'm like, okay, you need to give if people say they don't like Bangkok, I'm like, you need to give it another shot. Go to a sky bar, stay in kind of a nice hotel. There's some cool malls there. There's like, yeah, cool shopping, and I highly recommend.
Yeah, there's like, I mean, you know what else is I like about Southeast Asia? I don't know if this is, tell me if I'm Filipino, so I don't know why I don't know this, but um, I don't think the Philippines has many night markets, but Bangkok has some cool night markets. I went to Kuala Lumpur; they had cool night markets. I know Singapore has night markets. Those were some of the things that I really enjoyed about going to some of those places. Did you get to do
Yeah.
that too?
Yeah, yeah, definitely did that a lot when I was in Bangkok, and I had actually gone to Bangkok about 2 years ago as well, and did some cool night markets. I actually tried eating a water bug for the first time. I have a video on YouTube about that, and it was very salty, but you can get anything there. It's very, yeah, you can explore all your food cravings or interesting food, and it's a cool time.
Yeah, in addition to getting those elephant pants too, right?
Yes, exactly. You can just, yeah, you just need to bring an extra suitcase. You can stock up on all your favorite goods and.
So how do you think travel has impacted the way that you approach life?
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like travel, I don't want to sound cliche, but it does change you as a person. And it makes you realize how vast the world is and how many different cultures there are and the way people live. And it just like opens your eyes up to this whole new world. And for me, also, too, something I kind of didn't realize that I'd get from travel was it made me appreciate Canada also a lot more. Because I mean, Vancouver is a beautiful city, but I think you kind of take a city for advantage the longer you live there. And so for me, every time I'd come back from traveling, I would just be kind of reamazed by my own city, along with obviously having this new experience in another city. And so just all around, I'd say has made me a better person and has just like opened my eyes up to the world and makes me want to travel so much more. Like I do want to travel for the rest of my life because it's truly an amazing experience.
I imagine it's made you definitely, like you're saying, because I feel that way too about I'm from California. I'm here in California right now due to the pandemic, about where I'm from. But especially now, during this pandemic, where you're stuck in Vancouver, right? Like you're stuck home in British Columbia, and so you have this appreciation for it. And maybe I don't know if this is happening for you, but this is something for me, is that it's making you see the place with your home with new curiosity and new eyes, and makes you want to even just explore your own backyard.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's especially true in the summer. I mean, in the winter, it rains a lot in Vancouver, but it's, yeah, truly a world-class city, Vancouver. And so I'm very grateful to live here. And every time I travel and come back, I'm always like, wow, like this, I'm really lucky to live here. And so that kind of, it gives me a new perspective on my own city too.
Yeah, I think we tend to have like a tendency when we're young and when we're growing up, you're like, you want to get out of your hometown. You want to
Yeah.
get out of where you live, and you want to see the rest of the world. And then when if you're lucky enough, to do that, then you come back again with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective, and you realize like, oh crap, I'm really lucky to be from here. Because like you said, like Vancouver, I mean, people want to go to Vancouver and
I
travel
know.
there.
Yeah.
And like so many people, even me being from the San Francisco Bay Area, like we growing up, I didn't go to SF like every single weekend. Like it was on a rare occasion that my family and I would even just venture out into San Francisco. Most of the time we just go to San Francisco to pick people up from the airport.
Yeah.
But you're just not really able to experience that or appreciate that when you're young. And now I guess when you're older and you have more freedom and you can do things and explore and whatnot, you can actually appreciate where you're from a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about just the different platforms that you're on, and also just your life as like a travel vlogger, content creator. We touched on this a moment ago, and it was, I talked to you about you know, the the idea of many people watching your content and looking at your videos and whatnot. Um, I mean, is there a level of like, how should I say this? Um, do you ever just get kind of nervous, I guess, for lack of better words, at times when there are so many eyes on you, like you have like 261,000 plus YouTube subscribers, 100,000 plus followers on Instagram and TikTok. Like, does that ever get overwhelming to think that like that many people care what you do?
Um, to be honest, not too much. I think a big reason for that is because for me, it's always been a very steady, kind of slow growth in all of my socials. I've not shot up in any of the stuff, I mean, except TikTok, which we can talk about that in a sec. But because I've been used to kind of slowly, like I reached 10,000, then 20,000, 30,000, and it was kind of a slow progression. I was used to having that many people watching my stuff, and I got used to it very quickly, I think. And so I think if you had kind of shot up in fame, take someone like Charlie D'Amelio, for example. She reached 100 million followers in a year. Someone like that might be a bit more not used to the spotlight. And so the thought of that many people following them could make them nervous. But I think when you've been doing it for a long time, you do for sure get used to it. And so it's not as intimidating.
Do you ever have people recognize you and just come up to you and say, "Hey, I follow you on Instagram or I watch your YouTube
Yeah,
videos"?
I actually do quite a bit, I would say. Or someone saying, "Oh, like I've watched your travel vlogs," or even someone who maybe I'll meet and then they'll say, "Oh, actually, I do think I've seen some of your YouTube videos." So it'll be kind of something like, "Oh, at some point I've seen it." And yeah, I would say like it's not too common. I would say it's more common when I am traveling in somewhere like Southeast Asia, where I have a lot of videos that have done super well there. And in Vancouver, sometimes it will happen, but it's usually a bit less common.
Gotcha. What about, just I'm curious about this, and you can let me know if this is something you think about or not. I just want to ask you about it. But like, you have your content is amazing. You have these beautiful cinematic videos. Your style is very cinematic on YouTube. Your photos on Instagram are incredible. I mean, they really like paint this picture of of for lack of better terms, like luxury through what you were experiencing through travel. Do you ever feel like a sense of tension at times between, you know, um, what you're showing to your followers and your subscribers, and between your normal life too? Because obviously, like, your travel experiences are amazing, but at the same time, it's not like your life is like perfect all the time.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And I think too, I mean, I feel like a lot of people do know that there's a difference between what you put out on YouTube and what the real reality of it is. And for me, it's something I do try and share with my audience. And whether that it might not be in that specific travel vlog, but me saying after that a lot of the stuff I show on YouTube is the most beautiful, curated version. So, for example, when I travel and I'm putting out this really nice travel vlog that has cool B roll and I'm showing the best experiences, a lot of times I won't necessarily show the bad part. So, it's like we're just got off a 12-hour flight, we're absolutely exhausted, we're sweaty, you're trying to haul your bags. And the only thing they'll see is we've showered by then and we're starting the vlog. We're like, what's up, guys? We're in this beautiful location. But I don't know. I kind of half and half will do that. So some vlogs I'll show kind of the behind the scenes, or I'll have full dedicated vlogs where I'm like the reality of traveling. And I actually do have a few vlogs on my channel which have done quite well, and it shows the behind the scenes of having to go maybe on 3 small boats and then get on a plane and then take a car, and it's just really complicated. So sharing that I think is important, along with sharing the beautiful B-roll as well, because it takes a balance. Because, yeah, otherwise a lot of people will go travel and think it's going to be a certain way. And I never want to show that kind of unrealistic perception of a place. But it is hard as a content creator because you also too want the video to look nice. So it's always like this internal struggle of figuring out where to be raw and real and then where to just do that like beautiful cinematic content. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely, I would imagine that it is, an up and down struggle to to
Yeah.
figure that out, because I talked about this with another one of my previous guests on the show. He is a creator himself who travels quite a bit, and you know, just trying to live up to like the image that you have on social media. I think for all of us, like even if like you're not you don't have like many followers, right? Like you're still essentially showing like the highlights of your life. And so
Yeah.
and we're all human beings, right? Like we all go through ups and downs, and we want people to know that as well, and have sympathy for us when things aren't going well, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, it's 2020 really brought that out in people where you had to be more raw and honest with your audience because everyone this year or last year, I guess, had gone through some sort of hardship, whether it's them losing their job or something like that. And people were angry and they didn't want to see these beautiful edited photos anymore. They wanted the real, raw, and honest of people. And so I really think it forced a lot of creators to be more kind of upfront with their audience and show their true selves. For me, that's something I feel like I've always kind of done. I usually can't keep anything to myself. I'm painfully honest. And so even meeting a subscriber in person, I'll like just divulge things of my life that you wouldn't, whatever, normally have someone say to you. But it's just like, I feel like being that kind of raw, honest way with your followers really helps in the long run of them allowing to connect with you and everything. And I mean, I could even be doing a better job of it now. I think that's kind of something as a content creator you can struggle with. But yeah, so I don't know if that answered your question, I think.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Like I think it's just something that I don't even know if there's like a right or wrong answer to that question, because
Yeah.
it's still so new. Like this is all, I mean, think about like Instagram came out what, like 2010? Like that's only like a little more than a decade ago. YouTube
Yeah.
started in like 2005. Like this whole creator economy that is still growing. Like I feel like we're still at inning one of it, is really at its inception. And like how we deal with it in the future is still to be determined. Like we're just all figuring it out as we go.
Definitely. And I find too also the platforms change so quickly that you really have to adapt to it. And that's what I always say to other content creators is that things are going to they'll change. And if you're not going to keep up with those changes, that you're going to get left behind. And so people who are new to YouTube, or if anyone listening to this is wanting to start a YouTube channel, just be prepared to kind of change with your content. And so maybe back 5 years ago, a certain type of content was really popular and those types of videos perform really well. Whereas now it's a different type of content. Like I was saying, people like that more raw, honest content where you're not showing just like necessarily the beautiful place. People want to see the behind the scenes. And so if you're willing to adapt and to change, you're more likely going to be successful on the platform.
Yeah, I want to touch on that a little bit more with you in terms of just how 2020 impacted you. Obviously, like your content is all travel, and like you haven't been able to travel that much, I imagine, right? Like maybe
Mhm.
locally.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
it's been basically I've done a lot of BC travel, and for me that's been hard because my BC vlogs like have never done that well, and so it definitely forced me to get more creative, but it was tough. Yeah, not being able to travel in 2020 with a travel channel is probably one of the industries that got hit the hardest was the travel industry, so
What else have you done to kind of just fill in that gap, in terms of the things that you were doing?
yeah, definitely. So I actually last year launched my clothing line, and so I started a reversible clothing line. It was kind of a travel line, but I mean, you can wear it in the summer, year round. And so it was a line of dresses, skirts, swimwear. I have jewelry now. And when I had started traveling years ago, I'd always thought, I'm like, always run out of outfits to wear on these trips. I wish reversible clothing existed. And so I decided to create that. And I started working on it a few years back. And then this year, when I had a lot more time on my hands, I was actually able to launch the line, put it out there. And yeah, now that's, to be honest, is what I spend a lot of my time doing. I still obviously do YouTube and everything, but more than 50% of my time is spent now on my clothing line. And so, like I was saying, with the ability to adapt and evolve, that also goes outside of YouTube as well. So when certain things hit, like a global pandemic, you need to have kind of other things up your sleeve, and versus just putting all your eggs in one basket, essentially.
Yeah, that's very cool. And it's great that you brought that up, because that was something that I wanted to chat with you about, was just going this route of building essentially like your own brand, right? Like so many times we see creators like yourself, or other aspiring creators, they're so worried about like, let me partner with a brand so that I can get the money. But I think it's really cool what you're doing to be more entrepreneurial and kind of essentially take control of that, because you already have like the direct relationship with your audience. And so why not just like actually own the product itself rather than like have to deal with a brand?
Yeah, definitely. And that's for sure the benefit of obviously having a bit of a following, is it makes it a lot easier to launch a brand, and because you already have this big audience you can tap into, versus someone just starting from scratch where most of their audience is going to come from ad dollars. For me, I have just kind of utilized my audience and marketing to them, and it was a great way to launch. And so I'm very grateful for that.
So what was the process like in terms of launching Live More? Like what did you do? Like it's got to be like a lot of work to to start the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And for me, it took, I would say, around 2 years of development and learning everything. And I had actually almost launched this other product. And then I ended up scrapping that and deciding to launch what I had released back in August, which was, I did satin reversible dresses and skirts. And like I said, it took about 2 years. And so for me, I started with, I had kind of tested at some manufacturers. I actually tested at a manufacturer in Bali when I was there 2 years ago. I got the samples back. They were horrible. They weren't good, not what I had wanted at all. And so I ended up working with a pattern maker in Vancouver, and I decided to kind of figure out exactly what I wanted. I got a perfect sample from them, and I just kind of tested the waters and tried out different manufacturers. It's a bit of an expensive process starting a clothing line, because developmental costs, each sample will usually be around like a few $100s if you're getting a few samples, and then you do a few rounds of that. So it can add up. But for me to actually have something now that's mine, I own it, it's amazing. And it's something I'm excited to grow into a really big thing one day, hopefully. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding as well.
Was this something that you could have imagined yourself doing when you were younger? Like, did you have kind of a bit of an entrepreneurial slant at all growing up?
I would, well, so my dad owns his own business. And so I obviously my entrepreneurial skills would come from seeing my dad own his business and everything. And I never thought necessarily about owning a clothing brand. That was something I was always interested in fashion. My YouTube career started in fashion. And so finding a way that I could mix my love for travel and my love for fashion was something that just worked out perfectly. I didn't really have that idea back in the day, but one day when I was making actually a YouTube video, I used to do these fashion hacks. And so I would make basically these fashion pieces, and I had made a wrap skirt one day, and I was like, oh, this would actually be really smart if this was reversible. And that's kind of for me when the spark came, and I was like, okay, I should do this and kind of start developing it. And that's when the whole developmental process started. But yeah, so it was like, I never thought I would do this, but it kind of all worked out, which makes me feel like it was meant to be.
How did you learn how to, like, all the things that were necessary to build a business? I mean, I imagine you maybe just went to the University of YouTube or something to look up some things.
Yeah, it was a very slow process, to be honest. I did a bunch of different resources. I mean, I bought a book on it. I at one point bought a course on it to just kind of understand the process of how you launch a clothing line. And then the biggest thing with it is that you just have to take baby steps. You have to do one thing step by step. So the first one, it's like make a list of manufacturers you can possibly contact, ask them what their MOQ is, which is minimum order quantity, and learning all these things from just different resources. Google was really helpful, but yeah, learning all that took about 2 years. It was a slow process. You can definitely do it a lot quicker. Now that I know everything that I do, I would say you could take a product idea and get it to market in about 6 months, but a lot of it is learning. And so I tried to lean on resources as well, people who had started clothing lines, but you kind of get tidbits from everyone and then you have to piece it together and then you actually have to take the action to make it happen.
Yeah, I'm serious. This is so cool that you've been able to do that. I mean, again, like this is not something I think you're probably very early on this. Like this is something we're probably going to see more creators like yourself do. But it's entrepreneurship is hard. It's not easy to
It's
start
really
a
hard.
business.
Yeah. A lot of
What
ups and downs.
Yeah, so what's been like the biggest challenge for you in that whole experience?
I'm like, where do I start? I honestly, every step of the way, there has been a new challenge from working with the manufacturers. I find the biggest challenge I've had is, I guess, communication issues, you could say, because one thing I always try and tell people who are wanting to start any sort of product is that you need to be so painfully specific with what you want, because you can never assume, because anytime you assume, it's always the opposite of what you assume they would do. So for example, if you wanted a strap, like a normal strap, say of a dress, goes over and has a clasps in the back, they'll add some sort of weird tie to it, or like just do something to it that you're like, why? I don't even understand. And so having something as clear as possible written out is the biggest thing I recommend for people when starting any sort of product or clothing line or whatever, because that's been such a big challenge for me, is just getting, I think, products kind of the way they're supposed to be. You'll end up doing a bunch of samples and that can be a huge headache. But I mean, when you finally get the final product, it's very, very rewarding. But everything up till then can be a bit frustrating.
Well, and then another thing too, like when I looked up your brand, right, I noticed that, you know, you're killing like multiple birds with like the same stone in the sense of your marketing and promotion, right? Like you mentioned, you've already built an audience, so there's already like a built-in market for that you could sell to. But then at the same time, you've built relationships through collaborations and just meeting other travel vloggers. I noticed that a lot of like your models in some of your photos on Instagram are like probably friends of yours who are also influencers. So you're probably like also just, hey, I could give you some product, maybe you could post about it. And is that kind of like how your marketing for this business goes for the most part?
Yeah, I'm very lucky that I have a lot of great, lovely women in my life who have been so kind and supportive with everything. So all the photos you essentially see on the website and everything, most of them, I'd say like 95% of them are all my friends. And everyone I find is very supportive in the influencing community, content creation community. People don't like the term influencer, so we'll call them content creators. But yeah, so that's definitely the plus side as well of being in the industry, is that because you have those connections, then you're able to actually send people product and do a lot of influencer marketing, because that's a huge help in getting your brand out there. And so from now, I've been focusing on basically all influencer marketing. I'm going to kind of this year branch more into ads, because I find that's really beneficial in scaling your business. But to start off, having those people who I could send product to and they were more than willing to post was really nice.
That's very cool. Yeah. Again, I think, I mean, a lot of people will probably, apply to go to business school and spend a lot of money on tuition, but you're just going through like the school of hard knocks here, just learning it as you go. But
Exactly.
even if you lose money, like in investment to start up the business, it's still it's like paying a tuition regardless, right? Like you're still learning something from the experience if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too also, I firmly believe that with the right marketing, any brand can succeed. If you have a decent product and you have good marketing, that there's essentially no chance of failing. Because the thing is, if you keep working at something and you really plug away, I really believe that people can do anything that they set their mind to. And so with that mentality, it's like, how could it fail?
Very cool. Well, I want to talk to you as well a little bit more, obviously, into the content creation side, because that's what this show is about. And touching on just the differences between YouTube and Instagram. Now, I did listen to, I think it was your first podcast that you put out with your friend Robin. And you guys were, it's an interesting conversation that you guys had. You were talking about the differences between Instagram and creating content for Instagram and creating content on YouTube, and how, obviously it's a little bit easier to like doctor an image on Photoshop, but videos are, as you've talked about earlier, is a little bit more raw as well. Like, do you have any like do's and don'ts that you could share for both platforms?
Yeah. So, like you had mentioned, it definitely is a different type of content for each platform. And even speaking about TikTok, it's like that is its own thing aside from Instagram and YouTube. But I would say that, so now Instagram is integrating a lot more video. And I think if that's something that a creator is comfortable doing. So say, for example, even if you are an Instagrammer and you're used to doing photos, I'd highly encourage you to do some video as well on Instagram, because that is kind of new and upcoming. There's a really good chance that it's going to take off and do a lot better. And in terms of the content creation that's different from YouTube and Instagram, I would say the gap on that is closing more and more each day because video is becoming a larger part of Instagram. But vlogs will obviously take a lot more time and effort. One thing with YouTube that I would say is really important is SEO, which is search engine optimization. Because if you're going to create a video, you want it to have a catchy title and a catchy thumbnail. And so really focusing on that title and thumbnail before you even film the video is something I always recommend for people creating content on YouTube, because it's going to make a world of a difference in terms of posting videos. And then in terms of Instagram's a bit more of a simpler platform because obviously you're just posting photos, but doing the proper hashtags, even though hashtags don't do as much anymore, it is still important to research hashtags and making sure that you're doing hashtags that have not millions of views or not millions of hits. So I guess photos under the hashtag, and having a combination of maybe a few 100,000 photos on a certain hashtag will really help grow Instagram. But to be honest, for me, Instagrams have always been a bit of a struggle. I totally know how to grow on there. TikTok, I would highly recommend people doing TikTok, because that is where I see a lot of potential for new creators to really blow up.
Tell me what you're seeing on TikTok. I was actually watching your TikTok before the interview, and you had like your most recent post was, what was it? It's you like, TikTok, stop sending me cats or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Like there's like a comedic slant that I think works on TikTok, right?
Definitely. So TikTok, I would say, is the most real of all the platforms. So people usually get on there looking like a crazy person, no makeup, no whatever, and they just talk to their followers. And you really see like the raw, honest side of people on TikTok. But that being said, it does still take a bit of a formula in order to grow on TikTok. And I do feel like I've nailed down that formula a little bit, at least when it comes to travel type videos. And so I always say this to people. So you need to, within the first 3 seconds of the video, have a hook. So that's saying something like, this right here is the craziest place you'll ever see. And then you have a really enticing image on it or video on there with text over the screen. And then you're also doing voiceover as well. And the combination of the three, with voiceover, text on the screen, and then giving the hook as well, will allow your content to people actually to stick around your content, and it will allow your content to excel. And having as much written text as you can on the video helps a lot, I find. And so if you ever go and look at one of my TikToks, my username on there is Laura_REIDD. You can kind of see the formula that I'm doing. Feel free to copy that formula. I think it works great. So yeah, for example, if I was talking about Bangkok, I did a sky bar video and I said, this right here is the craziest or a sky bar in Bangkok. And then I went into the video and say, this is Red Sky Bar. You can get drinks here for this amount, da da da. The video will be around 30 seconds and has a catchy song that's turned down low. So you have the voiceover with the song, and it usually allows people to want to follow you, want to know more. And you can even do it in your hometown. And so I've done a lot of ones in Vancouver as well that have done really well. So I'll say, this is the best sushi restaurant in Vancouver. And a little hack that most people don't know is if you say something in your video that someone's going to disagree with, you're going to get more comments, which is actually going to boost you in the algorithm. So I always make really bold statements in the start of my video. So if I say this is the best sushi restaurant in Vancouver, people say, no, it's not. This one is. And they're mad. And so they want to comment, and then they'll all fight with each other in the comments about where the best sushi restaurant is. And it does boost you in the algorithm. And that's something people don't talk about a lot, but saying something controversial or a bold statement or do a spelling error, it's a secret that does work.
Wow, that's really interesting. I
Yeah.
myself, honestly, like I have not dove into TikTok yet, like myself as a user. Like
You
I'm
need to.
I'm very selective about like what content I'm consuming these days. But I know like the content that's being made on TikTok is super interesting, and engaging. And what you're talking about, polarization, it does work. I mean, it can be used for good and evil. I think
Yeah.
in today's climate. So being mindful of that too is something to be aware of. Laura, I also, I want to talk to you also about obviously like your experiences of shooting travel content on the road. Just can you walk me through what that process looks like for you when 'cause when you go to these places? Again, everyone they see the final product, they see, oh wow, this is beautiful, this is amazing, but I know that it takes a lot of hard work to like plan out what you're going to shoot, where you're going to be, coordinating everything. I mean, just walk me through that process.
Yeah. So filming a YouTube video is a travel YouTube video specifically is definitely a lot more work than people would think. And so from the planning process where you're deciding on the thumbnail, deciding on the title, then you go out and shoot all day. And something I guess that does contribute to maybe Instagram or YouTube not being as real as people would think is that a lot of times in the videos when you're showing a beautiful spot and you're like, oh, we're just relaxing here, you're never relaxing there. So most of the time you're just going to a place, you're filming your intro clip, filming saying, oh, like telling a bit about the place, and then you get your B-roll and then you go to the next location. And it's not as a scene, and given not all travel vlogs are like that, I find when I'm going on an actual vacation and I just happen to be filming, those are very kind of raw and honest. But ones where I'm on a filming trip and say I go to the Philippines for 14 days and I'm trying to pump out as much content as possible, we will really plan out our days and we're kind of filming it like you would film a movie, I guess you would say. And so you go to the location, you get the shots, and then you go to the next location, you get the shots, and you're creating the storyline of the travel vlog. And that's something I think a lot of people don't realize. And the reason you have to do that as well is because you want the vlog to be as interesting as possible. And so you want to fit as much in there as possible. So say, for example, if you just go to the beach and hang out on the beach all day, it's not going to be that interesting of a vlog. And so you want to maybe go to a cool local restaurant, then go to the beach, and then go somewhere else, and then grab another snack along the road. Maybe you see a cool shack that has like smoothies, and then you go film somewhere else. And so it takes a lot of these scenes in order to make an interesting video. And so, yeah, when you film these travel vlogs, it's definitely a lot more work than people would think.
Do you create a script like prior to getting to a location with like everything that you want to say and then even like your shot list as well?
So for me, I don't ever create a script. I do try and have it be somewhat natural. I mean, obviously, we will plan out if we want to go shoot at a beach, if we want to go shoot maybe at a cool restaurant. When I go travel with this other friend of mine who she's a travel vlogger as well, we'll usually kind of do a rough outline of what we want to do on each day. And so I guess essentially that is making kind of a schedule. But yeah, for them in terms of having a script for what we're going to say, we don't do that because that I feel like is at that point you're just making a movie versus a travel vlog.
Now you've been doing this for several years now. Do you feel like you've gotten to a point where you're pretty comfortable just walking around with a camera in hand and like vlogging in public spaces?
So you think I would be, but I still I don't like people staring at me, and I've never liked it. I'm like, maybe that's a little social anxiety, I don't even know, but I still get very uncomfortable by holding a vlog camera in public, especially too in my hometown. I find that's kind of like the worst. When I'm traveling, it's not as bad, but a lot of people stare and are like, oh, like, are you making a travel vlog? Or they'll try and yell in the back of your video, and you just draw a lot of attention to yourself. So I don't know if you ever really get used to it. I mean, maybe some people do, but I still am like a little awkward.
So what do you do to, I guess, like manage the anxiety that comes with that? Like you just keep going and just keep doing it and try to ignore people?
Essentially, yeah, I just tell myself like this is my job, it's okay, it's fine, and I just do it. And the key is to not make eye contact with people while you're filming. They'll stare at you, they might take photos of you, and people will literally make fun of you while you're doing it. It's actually like not that fun of a process when people are laughing and pointing and taking photos of you, but you just kind of have to push through, and it's most awkward when you're starting your channel. And so that's kind of the biggest hurdle, I would say, for people who are new YouTubers and they're like, oh, I am uncomfortable. I mean, it will get easier, but it's always a little awkward. So you just have to ignore them and be like, you know what, this is for a greater purpose and just go from there.
Yeah, that's something I think that's so key to highlight, is that the nerves don't really ever go away, right? Like
Yeah, you just get more used to it, and so that is easier, but it is always still a little awkward filming in public.
yeah, it's probably like, I mean, maybe like it's kind of it's similar to like riding a roller coaster. You know, when you go on a roller coaster, you get that little feeling in your stomach as you're going up, and
Yeah.
you're nervous, and then as it starts going, then you're just exhilarated and like feeling super excited about the whole experience, and then when it's over, you're like, that was fun. Can I do it again?
Yeah, exactly. Essentially.
Very cool. Another thing I want to ask you about, in terms of filming out in public and filming abroad in different places, have you ever found yourself in sketchy situations? You know, because some of these countries, obviously, like in Southeast Asia, they're wonderful, they're amazing countries, but you know, sometimes when you're walking around with expensive camera equipment and gear, like you said, it brings attention to you.
Yeah, for me, I'm always super, super careful with things. And so, for example, when it's just myself and another female friend of mine traveling, we usually would just like be super careful about going out at night. We won't want to carry around our gear at night after, like, or if we go down any dark areas. My last trip I had gone on, we kind of, the Airbnb we were staying in was down a bit of like a dark alley. And so we just did not go out after it got dark. And so being kind of super careful and diligent in those areas will allow you to, be safer traveling, because it for sure can get sketchy feeling at times when you're carrying around that much gear. So it's just something you have to be really careful of. I've thankfully never been in any super sketchy situations, but I'm also really careful. And so I think that's helped with that.
How much equipment do you normally carry with you on your trips?
Oh, a lot. So, when I had my drone, I'd have a drone and then my big camera, I'd have 3 lenses, and then I'd have 2 other cameras and just like all the accessories and a laptop in there. And it was just a lot. Now I try and bring a bit of less gear on my trips, but it's always, yeah, you have to kind of decide how heavy of a bag you want.
What percentage too of your travels do you actually just get to enjoy that aren't work related?
I would say none. Sometimes I will go on vacation. I went on vacation last summer actually with my boyfriend. We went to Italy, but there were so many good things to film that I ended up filming every day. But that was an example where it was more of a natural filming thing. So we'd go relax at the beach and I would just film us at the beach. And there wasn't as much B-roll. It was more just kind of natural vlog footage. But to be honest, yeah, not a lot. And the thing is, I really like filming. And so for me, it doesn't feel like that much work. Like I get a lot of enjoyment out of filming. So that's nice.
It feels more like play to you, right? Like it's not.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not a job. I mean, it is a job, but it's not a
sometimes,
job.
but
Yes, exactly.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So another thing too that I'd like to discuss with you is just dealing with your audience, and particularly the negative part of your audience. And this is something I'm curious about as a guy, because I don't have to experience this, and I know from talking to other female creators and other women who create content on YouTube that, you know, you have to deal with a lot more negativity and harassment than I think men do. I mean, I had a guest, ironically, last week I spoke to another travel vlogger, and his wife sometimes creates content on their channel. And he had mentioned to me, like, whenever we post stuff with her in it, the feedback is like almost more negative and lewd. And I never thought about that. So I'm really curious, like, what that experience is like for you personally.
Yeah, it can definitely be tough at times. And I think too, also with females, you get picked apart more on your appearance than males would. And it can for sure be frustrating. But I don't even know. At times I'm just like, it makes me really tired and I'm just like, oh, like frustrated. But it almost feels like you're like, well, like, what can I do? So you just kind of have to like push through it. But yeah, it is frustrating how like males don't get as much negative feedback, I would say, in terms of like just how they look or like whatever. And so, yeah, it is frustrating for sure.
Are when you I know you have like content creator friends, traveler friends who are also male. Like, is this something that you bring up to them, and are they like, "What are you talking about? I don't get what you're talking about. I have no idea what this experience is that you're
Yeah,
detailing."
yeah, I would say so. Like, I mean, to be honest, I don't have that many male content creator friends. Most of the content creators that are my friends are females. But yeah, it's kind of a bit hard to explain to them, but they get it also too. Like I mean, they see the comments and they see how that would be frustrating. And so, yeah, I don't know. It feels like a lost cause. It's like you hope that people would stop, but for some reason our society has just, yeah, kind of ingrained that women need to look perfect all the time. So if you don't, then people are going to say, and also too, there's when they're hiding behind a wall of like an anonymous account, people are a lot more brutal. And so you'll for sure get more negative comments. And yeah, it's unfortunate.
Like, what's your typical? How do you typically respond to those? Like, I mean, not necessarily like responding back in the comments, but just personally, like in terms of dealing with it. Like, what do you do?
So I have been trying to not respond to the negative comments. I'm kind of bad at that. I always want to like just kind of put my 2 cents in because I'm like, why does this person get to come on my platform, like on my channels and disrespect me? Because I'll get given I don't get that many negative comments, but I will sometimes. And it really frustrates me because a lot of the times too, it's someone just seeing one video, taking one little grain of salt, whatever, and then running with it when they don't know the whole story. They don't know you, they don't know whatever. And you just you do have to brush it off. And the thing is, it does make you have really tough skin, which is something I am thankful for, but it can be hard at times. And I'm trying a new thing of not responding to them, and it's kind of helping. It's hard, but I think it's probably in the long run is good for me.
Yeah. And I imagine just over time, it's like with the anxiety of like going out and filming yourself, like it still sucks. Like it's not a great
Yeah.
feeling, but then you just build up that tough skin to essentially deal with it.
Exactly. Yeah, you get used to it. And so you just kind of realize that usually it's people who are maybe sad with their own lives. If they're leaving really nasty comments, it's something they're angry about with themselves. Because I've never met someone who's left a nasty comment, like to some of the like nasty comments I've gotten to that level. By any means, like someone could comment, I don't know. It's like the thing is, there's different types of comments. There's those comments that are just downright mean, and then there's some comments that have truth to them, or it's constructive feedback or constructive criticism, which I do appreciate constructive criticism. But then you'll see the comments where you're like, okay, that's just like downright bullying, and it's those types of comments from those people that you almost kind of feel bad for because you're like, it's clearly you're hurting in your life if you're going to come on someone's platform and say something that horribly mean. And so, yeah, you really do just have to take it with a grain of salt.
And another thing too that I think I don't know, I highly doubt like men deal with this at all in terms of comments, but it's just the sexual explicit nature of some comments for to women, like I just
Yeah.
don't like as a guy myself, I don't understand dudes who like try to slide in your DMs and say such lewd things or send like content that we
Oh,
won't we
yeah.
won't talk
I know what you're
about.
talking. Yeah.
But
I know. It's just one of those things that you just have to be like, okay, they're creeps, and then just like brush it off. Because if you dwell on it too much, it's like you won't survive in this industry because
yeah,
people are creeps, and yeah, they'll
yeah.
send you creepy messages, but you just have to block them and then move on.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Do you get a ton of those messages in your inboxes all the time?
No, for me, not like rarely ever, just because the content I'm posting is, I'm not like, I would say bikini models or those bikini Instagrammers get a lot. But because for me, I'm focusing more on like the travel and like the area versus myself, I don't really get many creepy comments. Thank goodness.
That's good. It seems like too you've built like a pretty substantial audience of women too. Like most of your
Yes.
followers are women.
Yeah, it's about 70 to 30%. And so it's that, which is kind of nice as well, that it's other females watching it. Because then I think they can relate to you more, and it's, yeah, you don't get as many creepy comments.
Well, Laura, this was really awesome to chat with you and
Yeah, this
talk
was
about
so
all of these
fun.
things. This was really cool. Like honestly, if you're down to do a round two at some point, I'd love to have you on the show
Yeah,
again.
definitely. It was great to talk to you. And yeah, this was wonderful.
There's so many things. There's so many things we could expand on. I had like a giant list of questions here on my laptop. I'm like, gotta pick the best ones and
I
make
know.
sure
I was like, oh, we're
touch on
at
them.
like an hour already. I was like, and then, like I said, I could talk about video all day long. So I would definitely be down to do another episode and we can keep chatting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we go, Laura, why don't you shout out, let everybody know where they can find you. Just shout out anything that you want to promote here at the end of the show.
Yeah. So you can find me, Laura Reid, Reid, or actually Reidd on YouTube, Instagram, and then I'm on TikTok as well. And if you guys want to shop my clothing line, it's Livmore the Label. That's Livmore, the label, and it's reversible, travel, everything. And so it's great for when we can travel again. And yeah, that's kind of, I'm everywhere online. Just type in Laura Reid in the search bar and you'll be able to find me.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great to talk to you.
We appreciate it. Hey, everybody, a few quick things for you before you go. First, you can find the show notes for this episode and previous episodes over at www.videocraftshow.com. And second, if you're a content creator that is struggling to organize your workflow and script your ideas, we've got a resource for you. Get a copy of our free script template. Using it can help you structure your videos and save you hours of time from filming in the process. To download it, just go to www.videocraftshow.com or look at the show notes for this page. Or if you are on YouTube, just go to the description down below and there is a link to sign up to our email list. When you do, it'll get delivered straight to your inbox. And third, if you're enjoying the show, make sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you get your podcasts. We're always looking forward to hearing from you and getting feedback from you as well. We want to hear it, both good and bad. It's one way we can improve the show moving forward. And finally, if you're watching the show on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button. It helps us out with the YouTube algorithm and make sure that this podcast gets in front of more creators just like you. And leave us a comment, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already to the YouTube channel. And before I wrap up here, I want to give a special thanks to my team for helping me to produce this show. Special shout out goes to Nikki Vicente, Rexa Stanislaw, Shara Texon, Chaco Orukan, and Paulo Lopez, along with the rest of the crew over at Video Husky. And if you are a content creator and you've got a video podcast like this, or if you've just got videos that you need to get edited, come to us at Video Husky. We can help. Visit www.videohusky.com to learn more. That is it. Again, I am your host, John Santiago, and we will see you next week on another edition of the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky.